All right, let's get into some Microsoft Azure. You can see I've got a account here that I'm going to do some fun stuff with. And there's a bunch of different things that are kind of cool to play with Azure. I would say one of the fun ones to start with would be Databricks. And so I'm going to go over to Databricks and just kick the tires here. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's create a new Databricks workspace. Let's get this whole thing working. So first step, you could select a resource group. This just links together all of the resources and costs here. So let's go ahead and pick one of these here. And then we can do a name and we can just say like live stream demo, right? And now region, um, it's up to us to pick a good region. Let's just do West US 2, looks like a default here, probably South Central US. Let's try that out. Let's see if that works. And go from there. Okay, great. We got this deployment scheduled, and then it takes just a few minutes to get Databricks cooking. And then once it is cooking, then we can actually dive into some more stuff here. Now, here we go. We see the deployment details. We can even dive into this, look at different things here. Let's refresh it, and hopefully it opens up pretty soon. Now, I also could just go to another environment I've already got set up here. Let's just go ahead and do that, and we can launch Workspace. That's all that's going to happen, and I can auth in. Now, the first thing that you want to do when you get into Azure Databricks here is that you could play around with the notebooks, or look, this is a new public preview, is you can say develop inside of VS Code with Databricks extension. Wow, that's pretty cool. You can do Databricks. So this is actually kind of a cool concept, is to go ahead and load up your Databricks environment here, and you could actually hook into it there. So that is actually nice. I like that. That's a really cool idea. But for now, I'll just stick with the notebook here. And the first thing that you'll need to do when you're playing around with Databricks is to make sure you have a cluster running. So look, I have a couple clusters already set up here. And let's go ahead and create one just for fun here. So if we go ahead and say create compute, a few things to be aware of here is whether you're using standard or you're using an ML cluster. And the difference here is that one is that the standards don't use GPUs, and the second is that there's different installations that are available. So it just really depends on what it is that you're trying to do. And then also, it's important to look at things like workers, min workers, max workers, things like that. Now, I have an AutoML cluster here that has 11.3 runtime, and I also have another cluster that's ML cluster running. Now, because this doesn't have the ML, we probably would want to launch this one if I want to play around with it. And I can actually go ahead and say click on start, and this thing can get cooking here. You can see minimum workers 9, maximum workers 8. So this, what'll happen is that it'll launch up, and then once it's available, I can use it to actually do notebook-based operations. Another thing that's kind of cool to take a look at is metrics. If you look at the metrics here, or you look at the UI, these will all pop up and show me different descriptive statistics about what's happening with my system. Now, if I go over to Workspace here, that's one place to take a look at different things. Another place that you can use to take a look at things is this dashboard here. So if you toggle between machine learning, SQL, data science, like whatever it is you want to do, let's go ahead and go to SQL, for example. You actually could play around with one of these examples. So look at this one, analyze a collection of preloaded data samples. Let's go ahead and open up the Data Explorer here. And you can say, please start the warehouse, or pick a different one to browse the table. So let's go ahead and say start our warehouse. And let's just see what happens. There we go. So this thing is starting to get cooking here. And as this Data Explorer starter is cooking up here, we could also take a look at different things inside of here, like SQL Warehouse. Here we go, starter warehouse. and we can see that, in fact, the Pro SQL Warehouse contains all the functionality and improved performance. The Classic SQL Warehouse reduced pricing. We can look at the monitor and look auto stop after 60 minutes, which is nice. And we can see different, information about it and connection details right here. And look, we can use these to connect to some kind of a data warehouse as well, including JDB URL. We can connect to different languages here and even look at different tools here and look at all the different partner connects, data ingestion partners, all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty good environment here to just kind of kick the tires here and play around with things. But again, if we go back to our SQL editor, we should have this thing getting ready here. So it's loaded, and we're just waiting for this to actually start. Now, while that's cooking, we also could toggle back to machine learning, and we could also do AutoML here, or we could look at a training guide. Let's go ahead and look at a training guide here, and let's take a look at what this does. So previewing the notebook editor, try it now, and they just give you a quick start for model tuning. So again, how do we know what it is that we're doing and what notebook? Well, we want to connect to an existing cluster, and we have one that's actually able to run, and then we can actually just try it out. So we can just go here and try out this cluster. We say, which cluster do we want? We want that one. Attach and run, and then this will actually allow us to use the cluster we'd set up earlier to actually run this example. So we can see waiting for cluster to start. Now, if while this is running, we can actually go back here as well to compute and see what the status is. And we see active, right? We actually see this thing looks like it's running now finally. We could even look at the event log here. We can see it's still starting. We could look at the driver logs, metrics, just take a look at what's actually happening. So it's still pending basically, but it looks close. It looks like it's actually it's actually getting pretty close. We can go back here to the previous page, and once this looks like this should be able to run once we get the cluster running. So it's again waiting for the cluster to start. So it should be, looks like it is actually ready to go. So attaching the cluster right here. There we go. And waiting to run. And waiting. We're about to run here. In fact, I could even running command. There we go. Command took 4 seconds. Now let's load some data inside of here. Let's go ahead and do that. Now let's do some ML flow tracking. Here we go. And let's go ahead and test area under the curve. Let's go ahead and start a hyperparameter run here. So this is going to fit the model. We can see that in fact it's logging automatically because it's using ML run. And we could even see this should show up in the, we have one logged experiment in the experiment run tab, which is right here. There we go, right? We see those experiment tab, which is pretty cool. And then we could load up a model, which is right here. Great. And then if we wanted to, we could do some hyperparameter tuning. Perfect, looks good. And then once the hyperparameter tuning is done, we could go ahead and search the jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's a big takeaway, is that for doing things with Databricks in particular, Azure is a great platform, and I'll keep cranking on this as time goes on. See you soon.